Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, and freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. This Shabbos is Erev Shabbos Parshas Chayei, and in New York we have the International Conference Kinnus HaShluchim. So we have to talk about the Parshas Shavua, a lesson for the week, a lesson of the week, and the connection to the International Conference of Shluchim, which by now we say the number of Shluchim of the Rebbe worldwide is over 5,000, and it's a tremendous lesson to be learned in that. And we could say that this is the Rebbe's chief contribution to the history of Judaism, that everybody is marveling at this and talks about it, and it's a spectacular achievement, which there are no words to describe. So, as usual, before we begin, we start with a prayer, and it's kapitel of Tehillim Kuf, Posik Beis. Ivdu es Adonai b'simcha, be'il lefanov b'nano. Serve Hashem with joy, come before Him with exaltation. So here we have an interesting contrast, paradox. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Serve God with joy. Ivdu is miloshen eved, servant. Servants usually don't have necessarily joy. A servant is about obedience. And here we say, serve Hashem with joy. So how do we accomplish that? How do we come to this? And basically this is really what we're going to discuss today, as I believe one of the greatest contributions of the Rebbe and Chassidus in general. And I hope we'll do a bit of justice. But first, before we get to Shluchim, let's start with Parshas Chayei. And in this week's Parsha, the first chapter, the beginning of Chayei, talks about how Avrohom bought a burial site, a burial plot for his wife, for Sarah. Now, it's very unusual at what length the Torah describes Avrohom purchasing this plot of land. And how Ephron first appears to be very generous, and you could take it, I'll give it to you, and Avrohom refuses it as a gift. And then the bottom line is Avrohom pays full price, kesef moli. So I believe there's a lot to discuss over here, especially the fact that it goes through such a great length discussing it. As a matter of fact, by the way, some of the commentators, I just bring this out because it's very, very interesting. Some of the commentators note how this was actually a very great test for Avrohom. That even though Hashem promised him, that Hashem promised Avrohom that he would get the whole land, nevertheless, he has to start dealing and negotiating with it and dealing with all these details and then paying an exorbitant price for the property. So it's actually brought down in the commentaries that this was a test. And later on in Parshas Vayera, when we see that Moshe Rabbeinu complained to Hashem, and Moshe said, why the bad things happen to the people, and then Hashem answers him, I had the Avrohom, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they didn't complain. So one of the things that the Eibishter mentions to Moshe was to each one of them I promised a land, that it would be theirs, and they didn't see it accomplished in their lifetime, and they never complained. And he brings out this point about Avrohom. I promised him the land, and he didn't get it. He didn't see it fulfilled, and he didn't complain. So we see that Hashem himself considered this a very high level of Avrohom, that he didn't complain about this aspect. And here Avrohom had to actually buy the Maras HaMachpelah. And Rashi says that he bought it b'kesef molei, Pasek Tes, v'yitan li es Maras HaMachpelah shaloi, asher b'ktzei sadeu b'kesef molei, yitnena li b'seichechem l'achuzes kover. So Avrohom says, I will get the Maras HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, and it should be for full price. And Rashi says over here, Bekesef Molei Sholim. It means complete price. Kol Shavya. Its entire value. V'chein David Omer La'Ravna. And so did David say to Ravna, Bekesef Molei. For a full price. So the main point I'm going to say is from a Sikha of the Rebbe, in Chelik Yud, Chayei Aleph, the first Sikha of Chayei. And the Rebbe over there explains, the Rebbe asks a couple of questions. Why does he have to pay the full price? What does Rashi do by bringing a proof that he has to, from David HaMelech, etc. So the Rebbe goes on to explain. And first I'll say what the Rebbe says over there. And then we're going to come into a discussion about work, avodah. In that sikha, the Rebbe says, and I'll just read you one small paragraph, that David, let's go to the story of David. David conquered Yerushalayim, and he wanted to build a mizbeach. And the truth is, in the law the law is, if you conquer a land, it's yours. So I'm just going to read one point. There was a section that he wanted to build a mizbeach over there, and Rashi and the Rebbe says like this: that if he would have taken it, David would have taken it midin kivush because he conquered it. So ein ze shayla legamri as shaycha shalareina la goyra. So then he sometimes called, this king is called sometimes Aravna and sometimes Oren. So then that means that he still has a connection because he doesn't really agree to it. He was forced to give it. So it's still a tribute. And there's talk about how he really didn't want to give it up, that other person, but he was forced to. He had no choice. And if he would have given it, in other words, that Goy king would have given to David as a gift, so then it's something which is Asher L'cha. It's still yours. Oh, because in the pasuk over there, Rashi and David HaMelech said, "Oh, I forgot the pasuk here." He said, "I don't want to give him his be'ech to anything that's yours." So in other words, that means that there's an union of secularism, there's an union of not holiness connected to this site. So therefore, if it'll be given as a gift to us, that means that it's still connected to where it came from. And I can't give God something which is connected to someone else. I can't make it holy. So therefore, it says over here that David pays kesef moli its full value. B'chdei l'salei kol chusei shel hareini mikol v'koil shel itilei shum machiza v'shaychas l'mizbeach v'akabonis. In other words, if we're offering something to Hashem, it has to be completely ours. It has to be completely in our control. We can't attribute it, we can't have any association or attest anything connected to something else, which is not pure and direct, concentrated for Hashem. So this is one lesson. So therefore we talk about Avrohom Avinu, and we talk about elevating the world. So we have to realize that a Jew, in his environment, in his surroundings, it has to be completely elevated to Hashem. We have to take it out of its previous level, of its previous category, and we have to take it out of its previous category completely. And the Rebbe also speaks about this also in the Sikha Chelik Lamed Hey, same idea, that there was a tkuma to the field like graduated, had to graduate from being Ephraim's, totally to become Avrohom Avinu's. So that's one point, that's one lesson. In other words, one lesson is we have to take something, and in order for it to become completely uprooted from before, we have to be willing to pay a very high price, but so that it should become completely ours. Okay. But now let's go on to talk, let's go rewind, so to speak. We'll talk about if someone asks a question, why does Hashem need our service to be in a way that involves hard work? There's obstacles, there's challenges, there's adversity. Like, for example, even in this case, the fact that he had to go through this whole deal. I mean, and what happens if the Eibishter would have made it that he'll show him a place and say, go there, that's the place for Sarah. Hashem could point it out, could show him the way. It doesn't involve taking it out of someone else's property. Whatever. Why does there have to be this struggle? Why does there have to be this hardship? So let's take it step by step. The first answer, which would be based on what the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 15, and that is that avodah means labor, and hard labor. And why? Because that means that you're serving God. What's religion? What's your relationship with Hashem? That it fits your profile because it's convenient. If you're only serving God because it's convenient and because it fits your profile, that means you never really reach transcendence. You serve yourself because you agree, because you like it. Feel good Judaism. That's not what it means to be into a relationship with God. To be into a relationship with God, you must transcend your limitations. That's basic. Now, the only way you're going to transcend your limitations if you go out of your nature. If something came to you and it wasn't easy, but it came through blood, sweat, and tears, that's how you really transcend. Similar to the idea of no pain, no gain. There has to be a certain sense of pain. In other words, you're going out of yourself in order to grow. And this is in many, many different concepts in Chassidus. The idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the idea of iskafia, suppressing certain natural instincts and tendencies. It's all about the same thing. In other words, only by going away from your nature do you really become connected to God. Yesh, ayin, yesh. If you want to go from one sort of existence, something which is trapped in your boundaries and borders, there has to be a complete lech lecha, going away from that. Yesh, ayin, yesh, to become a new being, a new entity. And that's really what the whole service of Hashem is about. Becoming a new entity and becoming united with Hashem. But in order to do that, which means transcendence, it has to be that it's about something which we go out of our box. We do something unpredictable. We do something that doesn't fit the profile, and it involves actually hard labor. So that's one explanation. Then comes another explanation, similar to what he says over here. Ownership. In order for it to become yours, there has to be work. Like the famous statement of the Gemara, Adam reitze b'kaf shaloi, mitisha kav mishal chaverei. A person wants one measurement that's his own, that came out of his own efforts, then 9 times that amount, so to speak, a measurement 9 times, that's someone else's. That means it came for free. And like the Rebbe would speak about it many times, it's called Nama d'chsufa, bread of shame. It's not yours. And if it's not really yours, then that's not what it's about. So this idea of taking complete ownership, that's also that your whole Avodas Hashem should be your own. If it comes easy, it's not really your own. That's the idea of Chabad. And that's what Alter Rebbe said, that it should be avodah b'koyach atzmai. It's not that you get inspired from without, but it has to be from within. And if it comes from within, that means it involves work. It's like do it yourself, so to speak. When it's do it yourself, then it's yours. Then you can take pride in what you did because you accomplished it. And then it's really you. Otherwise, it's not really you. Now, there is a third explanation in this idea of ownership, but ownership means 2 things. So number 1, ownership means it's yours. It became you. Now we come to another point, and I think this is unbelievable, and you have to look it up yourself. There was a Farbrengen, twice by the way, on Yud Aleph Nissen, when the Rebbe turned 70, which was in 1972, and when the Rebbe turned 80, which was in 1982, the Rebbe spoke about this idea, of not retiring. There's no such a notion of retirement in Judaism. And then, especially when on his 70th birthday, he spoke about this idea of hard work and effort. And if the Eibishter is so nice and so good, why does it have to always involve so much hard work? And why is there obstacles? And here you see the genius of the Rebbe and the counterintuitive approach. The Rebbe spoke that the real inner reason of why there's hardships and difficulties, and why that itself, that the Eibishter created man in such a way that it's Adam reitze b'kaf shaloi mitisha kav mishal chaverei, is because ultimately the Eibishter wanted Nasa Shutif LaKadosh Baruch Hu b'maaseh bereishis. Hashem wanted you should be a partner. You become godlike. How? What makes you a creator? By your contribution. You're not only a makabel, you're not a recipient, you're not only a reactionary, that things are happening to you, but you actually take charge. You become like God. And Hashem used this word many times in the Sikha, and I give you advice to look it up and read it again and again, because it's so revolutionary, it's so amazing, that the Rebbe says that Kaviyachal, he repeated saying Kaviyachal many times, that you become like God. And he said, like in a relationship, it's not that it's one-way street. In order for us to be really in a relationship with Hashem, the Eibishter had to give us that ability to be like Him. And how do we become like him? By making our contribution. So this is like so ironic. Here, until the Rebbe says that Sikha, if someone's going to talk about a Jew serving Hashem, the word serving comes with bittul, self-nullification. Sounds like a bit of crushing. Yesh, ayin yesh. You're a servant. And here the Rebbe turns it around completely and says, on the contrary, why does it have to be hard work? Because that represents your contribution. And by your hard work and your toil, by your bittul, you actually become like God. Because you're making your contribution. God made the world imperfect in the first place. So you should then go along, come along and perfect it. And that's how you become a partner. That was the Rebbe's answer. So here we see the most profound, brilliant answer when we're talking about serving Hashem. That it's actually about becoming like Hashem because your contribution is of supreme importance. And now we understand the pasuk, Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. Once a person looks at it in such a way that there's no idea of pain for the purpose of pain. And it's not only about, and there's no point in crushing, it's about becoming godlike. It's about becoming united with Hashem. It's about the Eibishter telling you, you make all of a difference to the degree that we're like partners. So now, to say, Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, is easy. We understand it perfectly. In other words, through serving the Eibishter and becoming a partner, and when we think about that, for 2 seconds, it causes the greatest joy. Wow. Look what God did. He made an imperfect world in order that we should be like him. So, I'm just going to finish with 3 quick anecdotes on this idea of Avodah. So let's recap. So we spoke 3 aspects of Avodah. Number 1, Avodah, let's go from level to level, it's just bittul. Bittul. Because like what the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 15, if we're serving a significant other, we have to realize the base of Judaism is we are becoming one with infinity, so we have to know it's on his terms, and not because it fits our profile. And that's the only way we can actually transcend. A second level is the idea that in order for us to really, that it should become ours, then we have to pay for it. And we have to work for it. Then it's ours. That idea. And that's what the Rebbe explains in the Sikha of Chelik Yud. Then comes a third idea, what the Rebbe explained by the Farbrengen of Yud Aleph Nissen, 1972, that we become a partner with Hashem. So those are 3 steps. Now, connecting it to Shlichus, I'm going to say something, and I hope I'm not going into some territory which is difficult. But, right now there's a big controversy about the vaccine. And I'm not giving any opinion, and it's none of my business what anybody else does. But I would say that one area where we see the difference, and here we see the genius in the Rebbe's approach, the Rebbe gave every shliach a great level of autonomy. Listen, I'm sending you to a certain country. You are the boss. You make Yiddishkeit for Hashem. We're not going to look over every single step of your way. You don't need a mashgiach, a supervisor. Of course, you give accountability. The Rebbe is the boss. Hashem is the boss, etc. But basically, it's a lot of autonomy. But it's the ultimate level of service. It's for life. But it's yours. Go ahead. We trust you. That idea. So obviously, we see the success of Shlichus, that this approach was genius. Because by making each person responsible, it's your thing. It's your life. That means now, you will take full responsibility and give it your whole life for the success. But now let's say right now we have a problem with vaccine. So now we see the difference. I'm just giving you a case scenario. Imagine you're living in a government and that government forces you to take the vaccine. Now there's a difference if you work for an organization or you are the organization. So if you work for a Jewish organization, a school, or a synagogue, or whatever it is, and they tell you, you have to get the vaccine. You might say, no, why should I get the vaccine? I'm against it, I don't believe in it, I don't think it's wrong, they don't have a right, etc., etc. Whatever your arguments are. It's a poison, whatever it is. But now imagine, it's your moisid, it's your shul, and you cannot continue operating your shul to put on tefillin with Jews unless you take the vaccine. Let's say, I'm just giving an example. I'm giving an example because I think this example brings out the point in a clear way. So imagine if you are the one who's told by the government that if you don't take the vaccine, we are closing your shul, you cannot operate the shul, your shul will have to be closed down, your Chabad house will have to be closed down. I don't think it'll be a question whether you get the vaccine or not. But if you're somebody who works in that moised, it's not yours, you might say, you know what, I'll choose when and how I should have my Mesiras Nefesh. But if it's not mine, I'm not taking the vaccine. That idea. So again, we see once it becomes yours, then the level of dedication is on a whole different level. I'm just saying. So that's another part of the genius. How the Rebbe, I believe, was the one who was able to create the perfect balance between absolute subservience and self-nullification, but at the same time, wonders of wonders, miracles of miracles. He fostered and cultivated independence, ingenuity, initiative. And that's why you see the ultimate Chassidish, the ultimate way of serving the Eibishter. He spoke about this, the Rebbe, in relation to Shlichus, a fourth level of Shlichus. You're completely nullified to the Mishaleach, to the one who sent you on a mission. But at the same time, he wants you left to your own devices and come to the right conclusions with your brains, with your talents, with your faculties. So here we have an unbelievable balance. The balance of service, but at the same time, with your contribution. You are a full partner. You have a full ownership. Your ingenuity, your initiative, etc. So just to finish off with a couple of anecdotes, I remember when Rabbi Yitzchak David Groner turned 75 and he had a Farbrengen. His birthday Farbrengens were amazing. So it was his 75th birthday and he was roaring. And he said, just like Avrohom Avinu, when he turned 75, begins the story of his life of Lech Lecha. He said, I haven't yet begun to scratch the surface. And he was talking about himself, that he turned 75 years old, that his attitude is he hasn't accomplished anything. He's going to start now. And boy, did he accomplish previously. He was an amazing, amazing personality, an amazing, amazing chassid. And it was amazing and inspiring to see how on his 75th birthday, he looked at himself as if he didn't accomplish anything. And now he's going to start working hard. So he's really challenging himself, that idea, and going further and further. Now, another story is, they say there's a story that there was a rabbi who the Rebbe sent him to go to Russia and do things. And when he came back to the Rebbe from his trip to Russia, he was talking to the Rebbe and telling the Rebbe how difficult it was and how hard it was to do the things that the Rebbe asked him to do. So the Rebbe said a line, Sind wenn es da Arizgenem a Kontrakt mit dem Rebbeinu Shalom, a das für de Tus farem soll onkommen gring. Since when have you taken out a contract with Hashem that what you do for him should come easy? So in other words, it can't come easy. That's not what Judaism is about, for the reason that we just explained. Finally, I think there's a story with the Tzemach Tzedek, which I think is amazing, which I think this story brings out everything in a way. That's the famous story that the Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe wanted to give the Tzemach Tzedek a gift, that he should be successful in his learning of Torah. So the Tzemach Tzedek refused the gift. And later on, he regretted it. So, what's the pshat? What did he think? What was his first thought? And what was his mistake? So the way it's explained was that the reason why the Tzemach Tzedek refused the gift, because he wanted to have the advantage of toil, Yegiya in Torah. Because there's nothing like toiling in Torah. Yegaita u'matzasa. You toil and then you find something much greater. And you're rewarded with an incomparable level of understanding, but you have to toil. So he wanted to have the advantage of toiling. But then he regretted it because he felt that with the gift of the Alter Rebbe, he would have immediately had a head start. And then he could have toiled on top of that. So the reason why this story is an amazing story is because it doesn't make a difference what level you are. There's always room to toil more. So this is the combination. We ask Hashem to help us, but we have to make our contribution. We have to have that level of toil. And the Tzemach Tzedek story brings out both ideas. There's also something very important to remember, talking about to think of, if du es Hashem b'simcha, to be inspired. This also the Rebbe, I heard from the Rebbe many times. Another point, the analogy of two people that are carrying a sack on a mountain, and one of them is very, very depressed and sad, and the other one is happy and smiling. And the word was that one of them is carrying a sack of rocks, and one of them is carrying a sack of diamonds. And the point is, even though both sacks weigh the same, this is a sack that he's carrying on his back, and it's 40 pounds, and he's crying every step of the way that it's very, very hard. And this one's carrying a sack of 40 pounds, diamonds, and he's smiling every step of the way and dancing. And that's the difference. Do you see it as rocks, or do you see it as diamonds? And this is the point that with Yiddishkeit, we have to see it as diamonds. It's about our relationship to Hashem, how we're getting closer to Hashem. Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. It might involve kesef mole. Sometimes it means you have to pay a full price. But because of that, we reach higher levels. It becomes more our own. And this is what Shlichus is all about. Baruch Hashem. The Eibishter sends us. It's a lifetime thing. Amen ken yiratzen. And we have to work hard. But we have to know that through this is how it goes. This is how it flows. The Rebbe also used to connect this to a story of Chanina Mendoza, that he once saw a rock and he wanted to bring it to the temple. And 5 angels came. They were like humans. And they said, we'll help you. He didn't realize they were angels. But you just have to put your little finger over here. So the Rebbe also brings out that point. We got to put our little finger. And then we'll see success way beyond we could even imagine. In that Sikha, when the Rebbe spoke about toil, the Rebbe said a lashon, but it doesn't have to necessarily mean Harvin, Rachmon Litzlan, verschwarzt werden. You could sometimes toil and it's just too much. You're getting black, etc. So it's like I tell my students, when it comes to physical things, there should be minimum investment and maximum return. When it comes to spiritual things, there it should be maximum investment but maximum return. So our toil should be sweating over understanding of Tosfos. Our toil should be sweating in understanding of Maimer. Our toil should be in sweating and sitting a bit longer in shul, concentrating on a posik. It shouldn't have to come with any physical pain, God forbid. Chas v'sholem v'chas v'sholem. It should all be only toiva nirva nigla. And we should channel our toil in our spiritual development of our faculties. And the Eibusha should help that finally we should see the results of all the shlichus, of all the chassidim and all the shluchim that should bring the gula mitzvah shleima, take it from Yad Mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.